So we, as part of the Clinical Trial Research Network, and like Dr. Statland had said, we wanted to include patients in this. One of our driving forces was patient engagement.
Sure.
And because of that, we realized that we could do better with recruitment in all of our research studies, like you're trying to do. We know that
Right.
there's a large number of patients that are out there that just don't participate, just don't want to participate for whatever reason, or don't know about it. And then retention, it's always important. One thing we are trying to do better as research institutes and coordinators and investigators is to relay how important these research studies are. So when you sign up to be in it, how important it is to see it through. That really our data is at the end, it's the beginning and the end,
right.
and everything in between, and how important it is to try to see it through as much as you possibly can. We understand things happen, but how important these studies are, that while some of them may not be drug studies, they are still very important to future drug studies, and we're all trying to build a foundation. We're all trying to get to the same thing, and
right.
How important it is to have participation and to show, like he said, these pharmaceutical companies that have invested this money and an effort into potential therapeutics.
And it takes money for research. That's
for sure.
That's the reality.
But one way that we can help as a community, researchers like Dr. Statland and patients, is laying that foundation so we can get drugs to clinical trials quicker and offset some of that money that we're doing some of this preclinical data. We're setting the groundwork for these future drug studies, and,
right.
and we share that with drug companies so it gets them into clinics even quicker.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to do, and part of that is, like I said, retaining subjects into patients into these research studies, letting them know how important it is and how much we appreciate their help. We can't do any of this without patients.
Right.
None of our job is possible without patients.
Right. You can only do so much in vivo.
Exactly. And then putting it into clinics. I mean, that's here at KU. That's our job. That's what we do. We don't do the lab work. We do the clinical research studies, and patients are what we need. And then another one, kind of like he had mentioned, and something that we had found on this patient advisory council, is dissemination of information. So, you mentioned you're very good at saying what resulted from this. What are my results, or how are you? What happened with this next? Some patients don't know to do that, and I think some research sites, because it could be 2 to 3 years down the road before
right.
we publish anything. Shouldn't be that long, but it can. Before we publish anything, or before we really kind of decide what to do with certain samples, we don't disseminate the information. We don't tell patients what we've done with it or what we found out with it, or we publish it and we just assume, well, they can Google it, but that's not always the case. Science literature is not the easiest to read. It's not the easiest to find unless
right.
you know exactly what you're looking for. So what we've done is we've created this patient advisory council. We've asked, I think there's about 10 patients on it. We asked all of our 8 sites to nominate 1 to 2 patients who they felt would be good to be on this. And it ranges from patients who've never done a research study to patients who participated in every possible research study you could imagine, who've had more muscle biopsies.
I've been there, yeah. I'm pretty much sign me up.
Yeah, right. We have, so it's a very wide spectrum, but I think that's what makes the group really great, because it's, this person who hasn't participated in much research, why haven't you? Is it because you don't want to? Is it because you have some sort of fear or lack of knowledge as to what we're doing with it?
Well, I'll bring one up from a direct experience, and I sort of, it's a head scratcher for me. My family did go through all 5 with Kennedy Krieger, so my brother didn't give a muscle biopsy. The one thing look, I'm not going to criticize any effort, but the muscle biopsies were requested before there was genetic confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's help. If my sister is negative, my father was negative, is there value to getting that muscle tissue into a xenograft context versus diseased muscle tissue? I really didn't know that answer, but the one thing I think the reaction is, this is a reaction I get from some. We're afraid of where that results of the DNA tests are going to go. You think about some of the bad publicity that you're getting with the privacy of and that's a real concern. In fact, I'm getting pushback from some of my own family members to contribute anymore. And another thing I think too, just frankly, again, from a patient advocacy. So I'm trying to work on a lot of different levels to communicate with research, biomedical research or clinical type research that we're here doing, or with pharmaceutical companies or anybody potentially has a financial ability to donate. Is the thing is a couple things, and I know from being science and engineering and being in groups, there could be a couple, I mean, frankly, I'm just going to put it all on the table. Ego, non-invented here syndrome, or private equity or private interest. And the concern, and what I'm trying to also advocate for, are maybe some of these results are not being published, whether it's successful or failure. And I'm all about it, there is no failure.
Absolutely.
There is no failure.
We still learn from failed studies.
Exactly. And if Thomas Edison,
very important.
when he invented the light bulb, when you flip that switch, remember, he may have done 1,000 bulbs that didn't work. And what did he say? I found 1,000 ways not to invent a light bulb.
Right,
so
right.
Every bit of data, quote unquote, good or bad, leads to an overall
Absolutely.
picture. And I would hope that tests that may not be public for whatever reason do become published. I know you indicated it's a difficult process, potentially, or arduous.
It's a lengthy process, and you don't ever, when you're publishing, you don't ever want to, you want to make sure you analyze it from every side. You don't want to publish something that seems super positive, and then you go back and you're like, well, maybe not so much.
Right, and that was the
and
other
you don't
thing,
want
right.
to, you don't want to publish something that seems negative, but maybe the study wasn't a negative study. It just, we weren't looking at the right endpoints. We didn't have the right endpoints.
Right.
We weren't looking at the right things. So, like you said, you don't want to say it's a failed study because it's never a failure. It may be a negative study and we didn't prove our hypothesis, but we still learned something else from it.
That's correct. One other thing, I think there's a reaction, I've heard this now, is we don't want to publish something that is wrong.
So that, a lot of people are fearful
Right,
of that. But
yes.
again, your hypothesis might have been wrong, but you still can learn from it, and there's still a lot to learn from it.
Right. So I would hope if there's any of that going on,
And one thing that I want to clarify too,
Yeah.
you had mentioned family members were scared of what's published. When we publish information, there is no private identifiable information in any public.
so there you go.
Yeah, there's nothing. And when for every research study, when we send out any samples, there is no private identifiable information with those samples. So
they're anonymized, effectively.
Exactly. So what we do, you come in, you do a muscle biopsy, you get a research number, and only KU has the log of who that number belongs to. If I'm sending those samples to Rochester or to Scott Harper's lab, he doesn't have any idea. He doesn't have the key for it. He doesn't know who those samples belong to. He sees a number and that's it. And then when he would go publish his stuff, he wouldn't even mention that number. I take that back. He could, but he still doesn't know who it's tied to. So when we publish, usually it's in groups of publications or groups of 7 subjects tested this, 8 subjects were this. We wouldn't say exact numbers.
Would you qualify it as 3 of those subjects were in the same family?
Yeah, so they could say that for sure, but they would
still anonymized.
Right, and with FSH, I mean, like you said, there could be 70 families who participate in it. Doesn't mean it'd be your specific family, and there are a lot of families who could have 3 people who have it. So it's very difficult. If you participated in that study and it said 3 people and you knew 3 people had it, maybe you would think that it was you, but doesn't necessarily mean that.
Right.
So that's something, again, education was something we found was a big part, or that the patient advisory councils pointed out to us, is we need to do better about educating participants and educating patients that while yes, we are taking your genetic results, we don't send any of it out with your name or your date of birth or anything like that. We may send it with your year of birth, just so for age purposes they can distinguish, and they kind of like to group patients into age groups. But we do everything we possibly can to protect identity of patients.
Right. So you do, and I do participate. I think in your. I get a weekly fall survey.
Yes.
I
You'll
think
get
that comes
for
out
12
of
weeks. Yep.
Well, it comes out of Rochester.
Yep, it does.
So I'm not always been good answering, and I got to be better on that.
That's
because
okay.
you have holes. But
It happens.
yeah, it happens. So I'm trying to be good with that. So if there is a registry, for that, I know I filled that stuff out for Rochester.
So
We'll
that-
put
yeah.
that on the bottom of the video.
That's strictly for the Resolve study. The registry that he was talking about is a combination of, you can distinguish between the two, but because of the work that Rochester does, it actually is available both for FSH and for myotonic dystrophy. But when we do results, we are able to separate, if we want to strictly
Right.
look at the FSH patients, we can. So one of the many advantages of that, so because you have genetic confirmation, if you had adult children, or if you had siblings
Yeah.
or parents even that hadn't been genetically tested, they could get that through Rochester for free. So you only need one confirmed diagnosis, and then any first degree relative can get free genetic testing through Rochester. They do have to consent to sign up to be in the registry, and then they'd send all of that in. Then they would get a kit. They could take it to any lab.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
You don't have to actually try. That was going to be one of my questions.
So Rochester would mail you a consent form. You would say yes. You would contact them, and we can give you the information and say, I want to be a part of the registry. They will ask you then, do you have genetic confirmation? If you do, then you're a part of the registry, and you'll get all of the updates. When we reach out to the registry a lot for research studies, and we'll say we have a research study that's only in KU. We're looking for 25 participants. Can you send a letter to every participant in our area? And
Right.
They'll get a letter, and then they call us and say, I want to be a part of it. We did it for our patient day to let everybody in the area know we were hosting a patient day. So we do it we use it for a lot of things. But if you didn't have a genetic confirmation, but your parent did, or a sibling did, you could then say, yes, I want to do genetic confirmation. They'll send you a kit. You take it to any lab. You don't have to run it through your insurance. I think that's the big thing that stops
Sure.
a lot of people. It's a very cheap test, and I'm not 100% sure how the cost goes, if you can turn that in or not. There should be a very minimal cost, because they're providing you with the whole kit. They provide you with the shipping.
Right, and
supplies
they're doing the
everything.
analysis,
Exactly.
not the labs themselves.
So then the actual samples go to Leiden. So they go to the University of Leiden in the Netherlands. It can take about 4 to 6 months to get the results, just because they run them in batch sampling. So you then will get a letter from the University of Rochester saying what your genetic results are.
Right.
But you have it. Leiden is the largest lab testing on FSH patients right now.
Could you spell that?
Leiden. So
Okay.
it's Leiden University in the Netherlands. Silver, I can't pronounce his last name very well. He's the one who's running all of these genetic samples. So it comes from his lab. We are using them for the Resolve study. Rochester uses them for all of their research.
Will that
studies.
be quote unquote like public domain that's available to, or
Because
know.
it's in the Netherlands, I'm not sure. I don't know how that is.
when I say public domain, I don't mean out for
So
everybody to
could
see, but
researchers
for
go
other
and-
research
right.
grabbing or
there
having
is
access to that.
I'm not 100% sure about that. I know for the University of Rochester's registry, yes, you can apply to use their anonymized data for research projects. So we don't know
That's
anything.
good stuff.
Yeah, it is, and it's I think there's like 900 and some FSH patients in it right now, but we know that there are far more in the
Oh,
US
that's
that
so
have
little.
FSH. Right.
Right.
So one thing that we've been really trying to let people know is how important it is to be on those registries, not only to get free genetic testing. I mean, that's fantastic. It doesn't go through your insurance, but also to be notified of any research studies or any events going on in your area. And one thing that we found was really beneficial, and really we hadn't thought about it, was we did a patient day in November, and I had several of the consent forms available. We had several parents that are choosing to do it where their children have been genetically confirmed, but neither parent is symptomatic. So they want to know who passed it along. They're curious to know because, could they be symptomatic later on?
Right. You
So-
keep going. I just want to do a quick piece of math here. So go ahead.
Yeah. So
I want to do some math here.
So that was something that we had so many parents reach out to us and ask for a kit because they were like, neither one of us knows who passed it down. They don't want to do it for insurance purposes. They don't, they don't want that on their medical record, but they want to know.
Right.
So it's interesting to researchers to have a parent who's asymptomatic and have children who are symptomatic. From our standpoint, it's
Sure,
very
absolutely.
interesting to have their genetic data and to see what's going on.
Right, and as Peter Jones likes to say, nature's found a way.
Yes, exactly.
In effect.
Yeah.
So, just one thing, I'm going to do that for another discussion, but just doing some numbers, if it's 1 in 8,000, let's say, and I'm sure that's underreported or under-identified, if you just look at the population of the United States, that's 40-some thousand people relative to 900. So we have,
so they most researchers think that there should be 10,000 people in that registry, and there's
look at that,
1,000.
So to the extent we can help with this, look, free is always good, right? People
Right.
like free things. You're getting a free your family.
And to me it's fantastic too for those people who you always hear my mom had one person's diagnosed, say I'm diagnosed, and I say, well, gosh, my mom growing up, she was had muscle weakness, couldn't raise her arms above her head,
right.
tripped and fell a lot, or you hear the common, she never smiled. People would always say, smile, stop looking so mean. But because she knows that I have it, and because we know that FSH is highly hereditary, mom never got tested. She just assumed she had it. And then siblings, same way. They don't want to pay for the genetic testing. They have the symptoms, so they don't get tested, and they say, well, I know that I have it. My sister got tested. Now is the time to get your genetic testing with all of the upcoming research trials that we anticipate starting in the next 12 to 18 months. Now is the time to do it. Now is the time that you need it because, like Resolve, some studies want FSH type 1 patients, not FSH type 2. And some research studies will let you in and do genetic testing when you're in there, but that can slow down the process a little bit. Why not just go ahead and do it and have it and then just be able to walk into any study that you may qualify for? Right,
and one thing I'll play, and this gets into, this is a very personal decision for each couple or family, and that is this. This is an interesting thing, and I think we know some people that did this. Now, I don't have any children. In fact, none of my siblings, my brother and sister, don't have children, so this is going to terminate with us. At least physically. But one of the things is it's autosomal, which means only one family member needs to have it. And then you have a 50-50 chance that your offspring will have it. You have 4 children, 50% of the chance 2 of them are going to be. So as a parent or a couple that is considering having or conceiving of a child, knowing that you have this, there could be, you have an option, which is an in vitro fertilization, right? So very early on, and then you could test in effect to know potentially whether that child would or would not. I mean, this gets, this is a personal decision.
For
but
sure.
It doesn't have to be a dead end. If people wish to have children and don't want to pass on this debilitating disease, at least in the time that there may be no treatment or cure, so to speak, at this particular point in time, that opens up an option for you to safely say, we can have children.
Absolutely.
Or we have to adopt if we wanted children.
And there
either way.
I cannot think of her name, but there is someone that specializes in specifically FSH, in vitro fertilization with family members that are carriers or with parents.
If you can
I will.
research that, and we'll put that at the below the video or something.
Dr. Statland knows, and we had a patient who did it. I think they're on the East Coast, but I will get that. I know that there is someone that specializes in it in the U.S. So.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, this is good. And so far as the patient, I'd love to participate if you think I'd be a positive.
Yeah. I mean, you're more than welcome. I'll send you the information. We're happy to have anybody. We did recruitment about a month ago, or that was about 2 months ago, I guess. It was right before our investigator meeting, but it's run by our patient engagement office. Kim Kimenow, Dr. Kim Kimenow, she has her PhD. She specializes in patient engagement here at KU. and she leads them, so she does a really great job of like kind of going round robin around the room. We kind of lay out what efforts we're currently doing, and then we got a lot of feedback on the last one about ways to improve, and we implemented a lot of them. We're still working on some of them, but I think the number one request was to have some sort of packet handy that isn't necessarily research study specific, because we have to get all of that IRB approved and it does change so often, but they said to have a common contact, so they can say, hey, call this person, and it's me.
And this is Riley.
Kylie.
I'm sorry, Kylie.
That's okay. That's okay.
What's your last name?
Higgs.
Higgs. Can you share your email
I
now?
can. I'll share my email, my office phone. But you usually see my name on any FSH letters that go out from our institution or from Rochester. Leanne Lewis is also a phenomenal contact from Rochester. She works with Dr. Tawil, and we both are kind of the lead coordinators or lead people for the CTRN and for the Resolve study.
Okay, so we're going to put that contact information for Kylie, which is below the video. Telephone number and or email, and I can see how responsive they've been. So look, the important thing in all this is, to the extent any of y'all are going through or your family is going through it, we get these types of questions, people join, what to expect, we don't know, we're not really being communicated as to really what's going on. This is all the body of work that's going on. These are all the wonderful people that are participating and helping this. And, you can be part of that, be part of the change. And that's, as I went through coping just quickly, it's like, why is it happening to me? Who doesn't go through that?
For sure. And that was something that we also found, because there are, it occurs in family members. We all know everyone deals very differently with stressful situations.
Sure.
New information, family dynamics play a large part, I think, in research participation or the diagnosis process too. You see those family members that one sibling is very involved and donates their body to science. I mean, they do everything science. And then you may have another one that just won't admit that they have it. I mean, there is such a wide spectrum.
And I also think, Kylie, there's this dynamic, as I see it, with medical conditions and families tend to be, I don't want to say taboo, but effectively don't want to share. And you know what? I'm very open. I'll also say, I'm going to get out there in front of it. I'm bipolar. So, and I've been very open about it. It's not like you're a serial killer, that you have anything to hide. You're not a closet serial killer. It happens. And the more you communicate, the more people in your family, cousins who are considering having children. I mean, the positive impact of communication. And look, people are on Facebook posting their dinner, where they're going. I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of, and be part of the solution. As I say, don't let it define you. You define it.
And education helps reduce the stigma of any of that, and just being well educated and having the resources that you need. And when I say well educated, I mean knowing that there are resources out there, knowing who to contact, knowing what's going on in the FSH world, having hope. I mean, we have so many patients who say, I don't go to clinic. I have patients who call me all the time and they haven't seen a neurologist in 15 years because when they went and were diagnosed, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing for them, and it was basically, well, see you again in a year. And nothing had changed. And they said, I'm not wasting my time to do this. But what we say from our standpoint is, it's extremely important to stay in contact with your neurologist, because they're going to be, especially if it's someone who focuses on FSH or is very well versed in FSH, they're going to know all of the up-to-date research. They're going to know what's going on. They're, by going to clinic regularly, or participating in research regularly, we know when we get a research study, every single one of us in this office, especially for, when we specialize in certain areas, for FSH, as soon as we get a study, I know my first 5 people I'm going to call, because I know that they'll qualify.
Right.
And I know that they want to do it. Because they've participated, we know their degree of severity. We know if they're willing to participate. We know that they've said, don't ever call me for a muscle biopsy, but I'll do anything else. So it's important to keep in contact, or reestablish that contact with your neurologist or a research center or whatever, so you'll be one of those first people.
And that could save months, if not years, of getting people. So everybody wants a treatment or cure quickly. I'm raising my hand for that. but it takes human resources to do that, and on both sides. So, yeah, if you're part of the FSH Patient Advocacy on Facebook, please register. We're asking questions. If you submit, or when I say submit, that's not, but if you agree to be part of a potentially preclinical or registry or a clinical trial, we can get that, and hopefully you could get in contact with and help facilitate getting this stuff online as quickly as possible. The sooner, the better. So, anyway, all right, Kiley, thank you. Or is there any, what should I call this, or entitle this video? Patient registry, or what would you?
Probably clinical trial research, FSH Clinical Trial Research Network.
Okay, so I'll title that, and then I can put a little bit of a narrative on it then.
Yeah, and
okay.
Dr. Statland, we can send you the talk that he gives. I meant to do that, I'm sorry. We got busy working.
Was that a
on
YouTube
grant.
video I saw him in front of?
Probably, yes.
Okay,
At the
I can
FSH
link to that.
Society?
Yeah,
Okay,
I can
okay.
link with that. As I say, I'm working with June and Mark Stone, and hopefully, they're gonna, and we put this body together, and then there'll be a lot of information for people to get.
And it's really important that you hit the like below, subscribe.
Share it on Facebook. I'm not a Facebook person, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But you can, what is that, 6 degrees of,
Oh, yes,
of separation?
Yes.
You could reach a lot of people, and we get this cumulative effect of getting this in. In fact, I'm even considering paying out of my own pocket to sponsor some of these things on other people's pages.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Can I make my own little financial contribution?
Anyway, if you hit the like below
Right.
and subscribe, and also join our Facebook page, you'll get a lot of valuable information.
Right, and more information is going to be coming online as we go through this tour of Italy,
Edit
so to
all that,
speak.
but I want that on there too, so because people watch it, but they don't always hit the like
Yeah.
or the subscribe. And if you hit the subscribe, then it automatically gets you into all the other videos.
Or share it on, if you have who doesn't have a social media
I
account?
know.
So, anyway, yeah, all that's good stuff.
We gotta get on Twitter too.
Okay, just so you know, I wasn't talking to, here's the individual on the other side of that dialogue. This is Kiley, say hello. She was a little camera shy. But anyway, thanks for all the work you do in the entire group. Everybody here, there's a
Yes.
lot of people behind Kiley and Jeff, and they're all, I want to make sure they're not unsung heroes in this effort.
No, you guys are the unsung heroes, though.
Wow.
Couldn't do anything we do without you. You make it all worthwhile.
Very good. Thanks. The video. The links below are going to be below the video, and please participate. Thanks so much for watching. Okay, this is where all the magic is happening now. This is an office here in the department of, what would this be, this administrative building?
Yeah, yeah, we've got a bunch of different stuff in this building.
So this is where all the good stuff is happening. The wizardry is taking place here, believe it or not. So why don't we just go around the table? You've already met Michaela, and why don't we go around?
Sherry Anderson.
Ayla McCauley.
Helen Tanui.
Samantha Colvin.
Alyssa Lackey.
Melissa Currents. Michelle Hudson.
And can you guys just touch on exactly a little bit of what you do, your participation, your role in this group?
So I work on all Duchenne trials, as well as another colleague of mine, Katie, who's not here today.
I work on ALS.
I'm a coordinator for a bunch of different diseases, but I worked a little bit on FSH trials as well as like ALS, SMA.
Right, and can I say there's an ACE 83 extension, which I've already been through the first cohort on open label, and I just was made aware of that. So
Yeah,
here's a
hopefully
perfect
coming up
opportunity
there.
why patient advocacy can be so good. So I want to join and get on that list. So thank you for that.
And I work with the ALS and myotonic dystrophy.
A few of my studies are myasthenia gravis and just random ones. A bunch of different diseases.
Yeah. I mostly do the myositis studies, so like dermatomyositis, polymyositis. I have a few ALS ones as well.
I'm a little different. I am a clinical evaluator, so I do all of the functional testing for the studies that we have, and so I see everyone from Duchenne's to myotonic to FSH to the myositises and pretty much everything.
And I'm a physical therapist, and I'm probably the newest member here, so it's still kind of up in the air.
Right. Well, I love the idea that you're going to be doing physical therapy, because I've gone to physical therapy.
Well, I'm going to be a clinical evaluator like Melissa, so. But.
Well, I think we need more of that, looking at physical therapy, PT, in the context of an underlying disease. And I just see that sorely lacking. So, okay, great.